Hi, today's video we're going to talk about one of the biggest problems with the social contract of marriage. Marriage is supposedly a forever thing, but many people don't go into it with that attitude. It was when I was young when we were warned by people not to treat marriages as some people treated their first house, a starter marriage, and then you would move on to something else. But now even scarier, we're becoming aware of the fact that some women get married just in order to get a divorce. One of the main reasons I think that marriage fails is that people don't look at marriage the same way. And back in a time when divorces were rare and when life and society looked at marriage differently, it was extremely difficult and extremely rare that a marriage was dissolved. Of course, that's before your time or my time, and now it's become a simple matter. Well, simple, it's not that simple. It's become a calculable matter of paying the right amount of money, seeing an attorney, and going through the necessary, excruciatingly painful steps in order to extricate something from your life that maybe never should have been there in the first place. And so we get to the crux of the matter, remarriage. Exists this attitude in the rising generation in particular, the one right after mine, I guess you call them millennials, who don't believe in sticking to anything. They have no loyalty, they have no commitment, and I'm not just talking about marriage, I'm talking about jobs, houses, cars, friends, educational pursuits, vocations. When it gets hard, they just bail. And it's not just that they're quitters, it's that they were never starters to begin with. Let me explain. In anything that has the high stakes and the high potential return, like marriage does, you don't get to the final round and to the winning hand by playing it safe. Marriage is a risk. Marriage, like all risks, involves you putting things in that constitute a sacrifice. I know someone once told me that love is giving someone the ability to hurt you and trusting that they won't use it. And so, since I live in Nevada and that's something that we do here, marriage can be considered as the last round of the World Series of poker, where if you're not willing to take risks and you're not willing to put a lot into it, you will never ever make it to that table. In fact, marriage, in order to be successful, just like that last hand of poker, requires you to go all in. And the problem with marriage, which is not seen in poker, is that some people can bluff you into thinking that they are. Now, in a poker game, and you have to push chips across the table, or you have to click on a thing on the internet and tell them how much you're betting. I'm not really sure because I don't gamble. There is a way to tell if someone has gone all in. You know, because the gaming industry requires you to put your chips on the table, you know they have at least this much. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have more in their pocket or their bank account, but you know that they're willing to give this much. And sometimes they will bet that, and then you have to match that. You know that they're willing to put this much into it. And so if that's an amount you're willing to match, then you might make a good match, and you might have a good chance of winning the pot. But there are people who don't go all in. Like I said, there are apparently women who get married not to get married. They get married so that they can divorce a man and take half of his stuff. Marriage allows people to bluff with their bet. It's one thing to bluff with your hand. It's one thing to give an impression that you are something that you're not, that you have things that you don't, that you've achieved things that you haven't. We can lie about things. Almost everybody, I guess, fluffs up their resume to one degree or another. But all of this showmanship is not about the bet. It's about whether or not we have a hand that can win. But in marriage, unlike in poker, you can bluff and not actually put all your chips in. And that, I think, is why marriages fail. There are a lot of people, my ex-wife included, who get engaged in marriage thinking that they can simply retract everything if they don't like it. It's like that person who doesn't know if they have a good hand and puts it in, and then they find out it's a bad one and they want to take it all back. And no serious poker player would allow that to happen. It's against the rules of the game, and if those are the rules of the game, they will never let you play. But in marriage, women are allowed to promise that they will bet, but never actually put the chips on the table. So the man, best case scenario, walks away with just his own chips. And worst case scenario, if he loses the hand because she's been bluffing with what she has, she can take some of his, and it didn't cost her a dime. And that's a problem. There is a reason why there's a growing and strong movement of men going their own way. Men are tired of entering into a contract that they are required to uphold even when the woman withdraws entirely from it. This is not to say that men are always whitewashed. There are men who have destroyed their own marriages, and there is behavior in which men engage that is absolutely reprehensible. However, studies have also shown that women are most likely to cheat now, or at least as likely to cheat as men. And so the infidelity in marriage is no longer strictly on the men, but all of the stigma still is. If you can't, in normal contractual relationships, it has to be win-win or no deal. Part of the problem with that is that many women will offer a man something that he doesn't value, and then complain that she's offered him a win-win. There are a growing number of women who think that men are looking at women hoping to find the things that men have. There are women who are going out there getting educations and vocations, and that's all well and good, except for I've never met a man who told me, you know why I'm dating my girlfriend or why I married my wife? Because she had this awesome job and made a buttload of money. That is not important to them. What matters to them is how she treats him, how she takes care of herself, and how she takes care of the family and the household, which are the traditional things for which women were sought in marriage. Not because they made a lot of money. Now, there are men out there who are looking for someone to pay their way. I know a guy who refers to himself as a kept man because his wife earns a ton of money, and so he doesn't have to work. He does take care of the household, so they've just swapped the roles, but in many cases the roles are not swapped. The woman comes in, and because she makes any amount of money, she assumes that she is exempted from any of the chores around the house. I know that was my experience. I was expected to cook and clean and do the laundry, etc., etc. And then when I didn't wash the clothes correctly and they shrank, I was blamed. And when I didn't make something that she wanted, she would just pick up takeout on the way home. And so I was always the scapegoat, but I was never rewarded for anything. And the best case scenario was that I broke even, or as I said before, that I walked away from the table with my chips. That isn't how it played out. In fact, I walked away from the table with barely any chips at all. And she walked away from the table having brought almost nothing and having taken almost everything. And that's the other problem with this, is that in the contractual relationship, if you go in under a false premise, then you can withdraw. It's one thing if she offers you something you don't value and you decide to abstain. It's another if she ostensibly offers you something that you value, and then because she has a headache or she doesn't feel like it or you don't treat her like a princess or some other selfish, narcissistic, hedonistic display, she says, I'm going to withhold my contractual obligation from you because you're not doing everything I demand. I find it very interesting to have read Laura Schlesinger's book, Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands, because she discusses in that book that withholding sexual intimacy in a relationship is essentially the same as committing adultery in a relationship, because the physical intimacy of a relationship is not something that's on the table. Women don't just bring it and offer it to men. Men bring it too, so it's a mutual thing where they both benefit. And if the woman can remove it and the man still has to pay for it, then who's getting cheated? And that's the problem I have with the contract of marriage today. It's not that I have a problem with the contract. I have a problem with the way society regards the contract, and I have a problem with the way some of the people who engage in the other side of the contract regard my responsibilities to the contract and their opportunities to escape it. Because they feel like they ought to be free at any time to withdraw completely and then still demand that I pay full price for pizza that never came. And I know pizza may be a bad example, but they demand me to pay for something I never actually got, because they have managed to paint themselves into a corner via argumentum ad misericordiam, that because they chose to marry me and live off of my knowledge, skills, and abilities, that they were somehow disadvantaged and oppressed because they didn't go get a college education and find a career for themselves. If that's important to them, they should do it. They should not ipso post facto make it my problem that they made a choice. I didn't force them to marry me. They made that decision on their own. And so we come back to the beginning. There are women out there who don't understand that in order for a marriage to work, both people must go all in. It is not a 50-50 thing. It is 100 and 100. Knowing that sometimes my best won't be 100% of my best, because I will have bad days too, and I understand and accept that sometimes their best isn't 100 either. But if you're holding back, do not be surprised if it fails. Most of the greatest rewards come with the greatest of risks. And if you're not willing to go all in, then you shouldn't expect to have all of it come out. Or you should not expect the maximum outcome possible if you are not willing to put in the maximum input. With great risk comes great rewards. With great power comes great responsibility. And women who are upset with the men going their own way movement need to take a look in the mirror and ask, am I actually willing to go all in? Or do I just say that? Because the proof is in the pudding. A lot of men no longer believe you just because you say it. A lot of people no longer believe anyone just because they say it, because it is what you do that defines you, not what you say. Men are not judged by their words. They are judged by their deeds. We like to judge ourselves by our intentions, but I am not affected by your intentions. I am affected by your actions. And if you demand to be judged by your intentions, then you must judge me by mine. And if you judge me by my actions, then expect me to judge you by yours. Because that's how it works. You can't come to a poker game and give bottle caps, IOUs, or old recycled underwear as specie. No gambler will accept that. It has to be something that the other person values, or it doesn't even count as an ante. And if you can't ante up, if you can't match, if all of your raises are checks written that your character cannot cash, then you should not be surprised that society relegates you to living with a bunch of cats. I know this may sound harsh, but truth sounds like hate to those who take the truth. And the guilty take the truth to be hard because it cuts them to the core. They know it is true, and because they can't argue with it, they will argue about the messenger. So I expect some flack from this. I know that not everyone is like that. I have a wonderful sister, I have an awesome mother, and I have met some great women. Unfortunately, either they were not people I was willing to date, but most of the time they were not willing to date me. Not because they were never willing to date me, but because they were not willing to accept the scenario that I offered, and so they decided, since it wasn't a win-win, no deal. And I'm okay with that. I don't expect every relationship to work out. I know from years of experience that most of the money you will spend on dating is spent on some other man's future spouse. And that's just how it works. But keep in mind that though you may choose to live your life the way you desire, you cannot choose the consequences. They are coupled to the choice. If you're one of those people who is deciding to get married, if you still believe in marriage, I feel for you. I have been frustrated myself, and I don't know what I'm going to do. All I know is I haven't been on a date for a long time, and I can't foresee one in the future. Not that I'm not open to it. I was given the following advice, and I'll leave you with that, and then I'll cut to the end for the day. Enjoy and be honest. Be observant and patient. And most of all, be open. And when the time comes, be open to put all your chips in, because it might actually work for you. And if it does, and you win, I will celebrate the win too. Because it's not just about me. Every good marriage is good for man. It's good for society. It's good for this country. It's good for everyone. The kids, the spouses, and everyone involved. Unfortunately, they're all too rare. Godspeed in your pursuit of happiness, whatever that means to you. Godspeed in your pursuit of love, because we all deserve it and we all hope for it. Take care of yourselves. And then when you are strong, strengthen your brethren. Take care.